Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Love and Scripture. Taking our last part of that series uh, sure that my phone is performing the way it should be performing, and that I have everything okay. Another installment of the Scriptures. Make this better with microphone, and with my camera here together in one place. Two. Um, Again, it's working still with respect to systems. Uh, since I'm not a tech guy, it takes a little bit for things to it takes a little bit for things to get where they're supposed to be. And um, all right, it takes a bit for things to get where they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to be doing. And it's a huge learning curve for me. A learning tree is what this is. And I'm growing because this is a learning tree. Being on public platforms, virtual platforms, social media platforms, things like that. It is a new area, unexplored area. But again, because it's a learning tree, that I am growing in this process of being able to be here and to do what it is we're doing. Always appreciative of Brother Marcus Holmes for the wonderful work that he is doing. Two things I think of when I think about what Brother Marcus is doing. Network, of course, everyone understands and sees that part. That he's actually networking, joining people from all across all different kind of areas, arenas, and backgrounds. And we see that that's readily seen and known and understood that he's doing. But then he's also mapping. He is also establishing um, footprints and mapping in the way that he is continuing to expand in what he's doing with love and stuff, and how he is setting up territory and putting programming and just all kinds of things, shows and things together like that. And so for that mapping, for that networking, we are grateful to him for that, and for allowing us, inviting us and allowing us to be here with love and stuff. Last time we were here, we were right on the cusp of the tragedies, or discussing at least the tragedies with Uvalde and the shootings. 10 days before that was Buffalo, New York. And believe it or not, that day, was last Wednesday here in Tulsa, there was another mass shooting. And there have almost been, to my knowledge, there have been four subsequent to even the one here in Tulsa. There have been four mass shootings that have occurred. And that's just to my knowledge. There may be more even than that. 229, I think, is the number of school shootings there have been from the time of the first recorded mass shooting of Columbine, I think 1995. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 2005, to now, 229 mass school shootings. But then this whole cadre of other kinds of mass violence that has been taking a place across the country. We brought out a scripture last time that lent itself to my understanding to what was happening there, especially regarding, still in our theme, love and the scriptures. But the idea that came across for me in that, Matthew 24, 12th verse. And of course, background of this is the response that Jesus gives to his disciples after they have asked him, when would the end be and what would be the sign of his coming? Jesus is coming. And his response to those things, he gives a whole almost chapter and a half, 2 chapter response to their question of when would the end be, and what would be the sign of his returning. He gave all of these signs. And of course, we remember well the idea of him talking about wars and rumors of war, because ever since I've been saved, even as a very young child, I remember that being talked about as one of the signs of the end. With all of the disturbances that were happening in the Near East. Of course, Vietnam was in its throes when I was born. And then hearing about other conflicts that continued to uh, occur all around the world, that part of Jesus's explanation of the signs that would um, characterize the time of his coming, wars and rumors of war, that was ingrained in, and most of us are very, very, very familiar with that as a sign of the end of his coming. But in the 24th chapter, 12th verse, he says something that I think is pinpoint in its accuracy, being descriptive of 2022 as a sign of his return. And this is what he says, 12th verse, Matthew 24, because of the multiplication of wickedness. King James Version, I think, translates that as and abounding in iniquity. I think is how King James, that's where I learned it, in King James, abounding because of the multiplication of love of the idea that the word or not, so that those who those who grow cold in loving people, then there are people who still remain as lovers of humankind, of mankind, of people. And so the staggering, this I believe is a staggering statement about love that Jesus makes, in that what we understand as wickedness or iniquity, and I guess some sense needs to be brought to that as well. Um, Wickedness and iniquity is not just sin. Sin is understood in the New Testament, especially. Old Testament carries the same idea that there is um, a gradation of what sinfulness is. There is the word sin itself, which literally specifically means to miss the mark. And what the idea, the imagery that is encompassed in that is that there is a target on the wall, and the individual aims at the target with all good intention, shooting for the target, and misses the mark, does not hit the bullseye, does not hit the target. That is what sin, when the Bible uses the terminology sin, the basic sense of sin is that, missing the mark. Bible then uses a terminology called transgression, or we'll talk about transgressors. That is a different grade or a different level, nuance of sin. If the same imagery is implored, that there's a target on the wall, the individual aims at the target, but at the last second before discharging the trigger, skews their shot, their aim, their focus, intentionally moving it That is called transgression. We can remember this if we see in wooded areas or large areas, open areas that is owned by somebody. And we've seen signs on those fences or trees that mark that area. Sometimes it's not even fenced off, but the sign itself creates a border and a barrier. If you see the sign, or even if you don't, because the sign is posted, if you breach that boundary line, if it's a fence there or not, the line where the sign is itself is the boundary line. Anybody who breaches that boundary line is called a transgressor or trespasser. And trespasses, transgression, it's the same thing as transgression. It means to knowingly violate the boundary. And so intentionally, if you're aiming at the target at the last second, you skew your shot, that is a trespass or transgression. That's a different grade of sin. It is called sin. The New Testament translates it as sin, but willingly violating, knowingly going against is a transgression. Neither of those is the word that is used in Matthew 24:12, because the multiplication of wickedness or the abounding of iniquity, wickedness and iniquity are used interchangeably for the same idea, the third grade of sin, that we actually do understand mostly as wickedness. This is what it actually means. That well, let me give the example again of the target. Is there on the wall. The person takes their aim in the complete opposite direction, knowing the target is there, but aims away from the target deliberately, fires a shot, and then claims that they tried with all of their might to hit the target. Iniquity, in a word, then, is to justify when I have knowingly gone against what I know is right. That's the word that is used in this verse where Jesus describes what the emotional, social level of people's relationship will be. He says, because of the multiplication of wickedness, that people trying to make wrong right, trying to justify what is wrong and explain it away as right. He says that's going to increase in such a way. And as he didn't say it's going to add, the word he uses is multiplication there, that in an exponential level, it is going to be maximizing. And he says, when that happens, the love of many will grow cold. And we can understand that, I think, as we see the events that are unfolding in front of us. We can understand that, I think, a little better because what that gives us in terms of imagery is that love then travels in levels. What we're seeing and what Jesus says, that love will grow cold. King James word again is wax cold. And the idea, picturesque language, the New Testament, both Old and New Testaments are written in very picturesque languages. Hebrew language, Greek language are very picturesque. So that as the readers are reading what is being said there are images that literally come to their minds. And our very picturesquely this idea that people's love will turn from a warm, molten, moldable, even pourable state to a solid, stolid, stiff state, and it will be cold. When something is cold, when a person's emotions are cold, when people's when their feelings are cold, any of us who've been in relationship with anybody understands that very well. That cold emotions produces, in some cases, indifference, and indifference is a little safer than the other things that cold love, that cold emotions produces. So indifference is one of uh is that, I think that's better. I hope that is better. Very good. Very good. Okay. Um And so, love, when it's cold in relationships, we understand that because it can even seek to harm, do damage, do violence to the other who is involved. And is what Jesus is saying here, and what we are seeing about love in society, is a love that is grown cold to the point where it is demonstrating violence, where it is demonstrating harm, where it is actually not intending the good of those who are around. In fact, it's ending in destruction of other people. Jesus says that that is one of the signs or characterizing events of the time of when he will return. And I there's a lot that could be said about that, from the standpoint of believers, the worldview of those who believe in Jesus Christ. It's a notice for those that, one, to address, be vigilant about addressing the state of your love. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it just wherever it lands, however it lands. Um, you be responsible for how you hear it. That some who are perpetrating violence against others, some of these mass shootings that we have seen, particularly one of the cases in South Carolina, the people claim to be Christian, claim to be a part of a religion. Some extremist groups, yes. Some extremist religions and practices, yes. But some claim to be Christian in a sense of a mainline Christianity. But they, for whatever reason, whatever explanation or excuse they give, they demonstrate this kind of violence against people in a demonstration of love that has grown cold. I say that to say to us that one of the things about this, when we look at how Jesus characterizes cold love, love growing cold, and remember he's talking to his disciples, but he's talking about everybody. So that does not exclude anyone, saved or unsaved. It does include everyone, unsaved and saved alike. And so one of the things about it is that it says to us that we ought to be vigilant in checking and making sure where our love is. Again, and so we talk about love, the different kinds of love, storge and phileo and eros and agape. Guess what word is used in this verse? It's not storge, talking about familial and family love. It's not phileo, talking about comrade and loving because you're joined in a cause. It's not eros, of course. The word in this verse is what Christians overwhelmingly have defined as the God kind of love. What's surprising about that? Because Jesus is not just talking about God's people saying that that love will grow cold. He's talking about everybody, including God's people. When I looked at this verse, as a matter of fact, and discovered that the word, I automatically assumed that for him there, the word the word was going to be used was either phileo or storge. To my complete amazement, the word is agape or agape, which again, overwhelmingly Christians have defined as God kind of love in the sense that, or in a way that, love in the sense of agape can only be experienced by God's people. That's been the understanding of, as I have heard it preached and talked about and taught for decades. Agape or agape love has always been relegated and exclusively defined and described as belonging to God, coming from God, and being a product of only those who are related to God. Is the word so this verse because literally be what is used there, but Jesus is saying, let me back up and say this first, that with Jesus using agape in this verse to explain what love will be like in the last days, in the last times. First of all, it gives a whole revolutionary shift to our understanding of love. Let me say that. Let me say that first. And because I was messed up when I saw that agape was the word. And so it means that as God's people, we've got to go and revisit something else. What's been said, what the scriptures has been saying, the things the scriptures have been saying about love. First, that's what it says. The other thing that it says is that the quality of what we have defined as the God kind of love, by virtue of the fact that Jesus describes this in the context of the world, of people, it means that that quality of love is possible with all of us. And I don't know how you're gonna hear that. I'm still working through it. I'm still trying to wrap my understanding around it, that Jesus uses agape or agape love in the sense of all people, because I have been taught and heard it preached and have understood for all of my saved life, which is almost all of my life. That that only had to do with God's people and with God himself. But Jesus says that agape will grow cold in most people. That the agape of most will grow cold. We're going to have to sit with that. We're going to have to sit with that. I think one of the ideas that saves us, maybe, or at least better puts us close to understanding the misunderstanding about what agape has been and how it's operated, is as we look at parenting. Parenting, I think, is the closest idea, and isn't that what it is? God our Father and us. Parenting, I think, is the closest idea in relationship that kind of will give some sense that agape is the product of just humanness of people, that it's possible among people. We see that for parents. And I've used this example actually even here, that when the child has been raised right and things done, everything that's been done right for them, and they've been brought up in a way that has been loving and that has taught love, but they become errant and been embarrassment and have done things altogether wrong. But the parent still loves their child. And it's true in relationships with husbands and wives as well. But it comes to the fact, according to how Jesus uses agape in this verse, that agape is possible for the world. And in that sense, the songwriter has it right, that what the world needs now is love, sweet love, but not the love that is emotional and just about affection. But the love that the world needs is God, who is love. Thank you tonight for sharing with Love in the Scriptures. We look to join you. Look for you to join us next week. See you then, 6 o'clock Eastern time on Love and Stuff. Blessings on you.